So I can't say this for sure, but I have a sense that if there's a sense of me, then there kind of inevitably will be a sense of unworthiness. Like I'm not good enough. And it seems like it can express in the person as extreme low self esteem or pride and arrogance, or somewhere in between, or it can oscillate between both of those. Um, yeah. So arrogance and pride comes from a sense of insecurity and not feeling good enough and feeling like you have to, appear better than. Um, the reason I want to talk about this is because the character here had like such low self esteem. And it was a huge source of suffering. Like, no matter what I did, no matter what I achieved, no matter what happened, it just, there was just such negativity around the identity of this character. Like, the self just looked down on the self. And that was the habitual self talk. That's how the self related to itself. It was very, very negative. Um, and I know that this is part of the story, but the thing is, when the me energy comes into form, when it manifests in the body, and then over time it's layered on with other conditioning and other things that are learned in your environment, the people around you. It's amplified. Society puts certain conditions on us, and like there's just so much that's added on to the sense of me, and then it grows. And then the story of me is so believed in. It feels so real. It's like it's the whole world. It's the only thing that's real for the me. Is its story, its identity, who it is, how it sees itself, how it defines itself. Um, so it's just this like a ball of energy, and for years and years it's believed in. And in the story, this character, um, or the me energy, like it tried to change its self talk and it tried to change its relationship to itself. So it practiced, things like affirmations and being there for itself and feeling the feelings that it was feeling and not just rejecting it or denying it or suppressing it, not feeling like the self was worthy enough to be present with. Um, and so all of these techniques were learned so that the self wouldn't suffer so much and the self wouldn't be so negative toward itself. Um, this is so odd to talk about because there is no self. There is no real me who has any free will to do any of this. But it learned new conditioning where then it believed that it could redefine itself and this is all story, but not be a prisoner to the way it was raised, the way it was related to when it was young, the way it took on society's conditioning. So it used spirituality and meditation and being aware of awareness, self-enquiry to kind of re-identify with the space and presence and um, this is all story. It's interesting to talk about because I know that it's all not true and it's not real. But the thing is, like, when that me formed and then became this like heavy identity, it's like it needed or it believed it needed something to counteract the heaviness, to lighten up the heaviness. Um, and and this has, I don't want to say nothing to do with awakening, but you don't need to do this in order to awaken. It's completely possible to awaken with an extremely low sense of self. The thing is, after you awakened, I can't say this for sure, but what would probably happen is that since now there's no belief in the sense of self, so there's no belief in the extremely low self esteem, then it might loosen its grip or it won't have as much of a heaviness, and perhaps over time, which is just an expression, perhaps over time it would dissolve slowly without, if it's like recognized that that was a pattern of the character, and perhaps it would be just better if it thought more highly of itself, then it would kind of like come back into balance. I This is all hypothetical because anything can appear after awakening and no one can really say. It just seems as if the neuroses of the person really does lighten up. So there isn't a bashing of the self because there's a knowing that there is no self. The reason why I wanted to bring up, um, what was this about? The reason why I wanted to bring up low self esteem is because at least here there was just a strong belief that I was so unworthy that I couldn't see beyond that. I couldn't believe that much else was possible because I just felt so deeply that I was just not worthy. I was just not good enough. So obviously that affected everything, all relationships, all interactions, the way I communicated, how I couldn't stand up for myself, or how I let others put me down or treat me badly, how I hid in certain ways, how I didn't want to truly engage in life because it was so painful to hear myself talk, my the way that I related to myself. That was just so painful. So the more I interacted with life, it was like a confrontation of me seeing how shitty I saw myself or felt about myself. Um, And again, like I said, I used spiritual practices and self-development and personal growth and all of that stuff to like improve it. And in the story, it did feel like there was progress being made. So when I came to this uncompromising message, already the identity had shifted. The identity had shifted from the limited small me, which is just a story, it's not really real, to the locationless, boundless awareness, which is also just a concept. But there was a belief shift, an identity shift that had taken place. So even if the negative self-talk would arise, it was just getting weaker and weaker. It would still arise, but belief in it had fallen away because all the suppressed emotions were allowed to come up and be felt. Um, and I also want to mention that I took um, maybe 8 months, around 8 months, to literally dedicate my whole life to um, a really devoted spiritual path where I was devoted to self inquiry, to meditation, to being in silence, to being presence. Um, and to be honest, like that's completely part of the story. That's all conceptual because what is can't be explained at all. So it doesn't even resonate for me now to say that this is awareness because it's that doesn't resonate. I don't know if it is or isn't. Awareness is just a word. It just seems right now. So I can just say this is just what is. And there's no one here to know anything. It's just what is. And um but I also just want to say like I truly still uh, there's a sense of gratitude for those 7 8 months um, where I was pretty much with a teacher, not face to face, but virtually. I would connect with her once in a while and I would process trauma in the system, just suppressed energy, basically. Um, and I would allow for it to come up. And this character, for whatever reason, wanted to be alone. So even though it was hard at times, like she really wanted solitude and valued solitude. And it was also a time where like so much suppressed stuff was allowed to come up. So it was nearly crying every day for, I want to say, months at a time. Like there might have not been a single day in a couple months that I didn't cry. I don't know if that's true, but it kind of seemed like that. Um, there were certain moments within that where I would have extreme anger come up. I would shout a lot. Like I would use a wet towel, dense wet towel, and scream in it so that like neighbors wouldn't hear. Um, that's just what this character felt like it needed to do. Because there was so much bottled up. And like as a child, like Suzanne was told to stay quiet and to do what she's told. And in general, as a child, I just had a sense that my wants aren't valued or important. So I learned how to prioritize other people's wants and needs to feel like that's more important than mine. And then Suzanne learned how to find pleasure in helping others or doing things for others, making others feel happy made her happy. So it was this twisted narrative that was being lived out instead of just doing what felt naturally right because of the conditioning. Then naturally anger arises when you're told what you want or what you need is not important. Naturally anger would arise, but as a child I felt probably ashamed of it, and I think I was maybe put down for it, for yelling. So then a lot of the anger was suppressed. And every time anger would arise throughout my life, like before this past year of intense meditation and stuff, there would just be a lot of guilt and, um, again, feelings of unworthiness, feelings of like I'm not in control of my emotions, or like I'm so emotionally sensitive, or I um, I'm so emotional, and it just felt like a disadvantage, or it felt like something was wrong. It felt like I needed to fix myself. I just wasn't good enough. Um, so yeah, the those couple of months were just time for me to let everything out. Um, and I'll admit, like by the end of it, like my body felt so much lighter. It was not fun all the time. Of course, there were moments where there was, immense rush of love and feeling of oneness and feeling of there's nothing wrong and this is all perfection and so much gratitude, and like all of that was balanced with the intense depression and sadness and anger and resentment and shame, and um, so there was a mixture of all of that. It was chaos. It was utter chaos. And life is chaos. What is chaos. Sometimes it could seem orderly, like ordered chaos. Yeah. But in a general sense, I feel as if a lot of the seeking energy was diminished, at least for here, throughout those couple of months, because I can just remember how intense the seeking was prior to that, and how dramatic life was, and how chaotic, and how much deep suffering there was. Um, and obviously, a lot of it was self created because there was such a deep sense of unworthiness. I needed to do this character needed to do extreme things like travel abroad and just like live in a foreign country for a while searching, and yeah, quitting her job, selling all her stuff. When this character was so when I was maybe 26, there was a time where I completely quit my job. I sold pretty much everything. Um, I left everything. I just packed a bag and then I started traveling. Um, and I still suffered a lot. I expected to be happier, but obviously that this hatred for myself was still there. It followed me abroad. Um, yeah, kind of did that twice in my life and had a very toxic relationship with someone abroad. Um, yeah, so a lot of it was self created. It was created by the me. With the low self esteem, it needed to compensate and thought that it could fix itself or find the answer externally. And so intense searching um, and trying to fix and control happened. And and then the more recent 8 months of just pure like meditation and being in solitude was kind of the reckoning that I'm not going to find it externally. And so it was really a drawing back in of, yeah, kind of giving up the external search. And now it was more of an internal search. But the irony is that it's in a way the same searching. Seeking is seeking. They're kind of, the seeing now is that there is no difference. But during those 7 months, there was a definite difference that I was intensely searching externally before, but now I have the answer. Now I can meditate for a long time. I really enjoy it. I'm at peace. Um, and like I said, there was a calming down of the system. Like a lot of what was suppressed was able to purge. So the system did feel more calm and the seeking energy did diminish because of that. And the low self esteem wasn't believed in anymore, like not nearly as strongly as before. Because, like I said, there was this identity shift. And um, but still there was a sense that something was missing. Like there was a sense I found the answer, this is it. And I actually started uploading videos on YouTube about awareness and abiding as awareness. Um, and all of the teachings that I had learned that had improved my self esteem or had shifted my identity. But there was still a sense that something wasn't quite right. Something was missing. There was still a sense of insecurity, a sense of lack. It was not as nearly as intense as before, not as nearly. But it's interesting to see that sense of insecurity, that sense of lack is so inherent within the me. It is the me. So it can't really, these are just words, but it can't really disappear or dissolve completely as long as there's a sense of me. As long as there's, I'm this body, I'm here, I exist, I am. So those teachings of awareness and self-inquiry, of just like coming back to the I am, is like a retreating back from identification with the external world and with the intense belief that the external world will give you fulfillment or finally complete you or whatever it might be. And there could be this shift of identity from all of the changing to just a pure I am. But again, that I am is the very foundation of the me sense. So that's where I think the very subtle insecurity, the very subtle sense of lack, that's why it was still there, because the I am sense is still the foundation of the me sense. um, and again, this is just a description. There's just gratitude for everything this character went through, whether it be an abusive relationship or toxic relationship. Like, there's just kind of amazement now. There's no true emotional connection. There's no investment or belief, emotional connection to the story and the timeline. So everything's kind of neutral. I see everything that happened as like kind of a beautiful story, a beautiful play. Um, and so this is just a description of what happened here. And liberation for no one is so unconditional. It has no conditions. So anything that happened here does not say anything about liberation. Because I feel like every seeming individual just has their own journey, in a sense. Um, and honestly, some people just wake up without going on a spiritual search at all, not being on a spiritual journey. So there's really no saying. Um, yeah. So that's, I just wanted to touch on